Welcome to our deep dive.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Today we're tackling human nature,
Oh, the good stuff.
using the laws of human nature, right?
That's right. This book is our guide today.
I'm excited to see what we uncover. So where do we even begin?
Well, it all starts with a concept that might make you think, that we're about to explore a horror movie, the shadow.
The shadow. Okay, now that sounds a little ominous. So is this like a psychological thriller or something?
Not quite,
Hmm.
but it is about a hidden side to our personalities. It's like, imagine everyone walking around wearing these masks, presenting this like polished version of themselves to the world, but underneath there's this shadow side.
So you're saying there's this whole other person lurking beneath the surface.
That's a great way to put it. And what's really fascinating is how this idea of the shadow has been around for centuries. Earlier cultures even attributed this hidden side to spirits or demons,
Oh, wow.
like something that needed to be exorcised. Now, we're not talking about actual demons here,
Right.
but more of those deeper, often darker motivations, those impulses that we try to keep in check.
So how do we even begin to spot this shadow in ourselves or others? Especially if it's so well hidden, right?
That's where things get interesting. The book suggests looking for contradictory behavior. Think about those people who seem to overemphasize certain traits. Maybe they're overly confident, excessively nice, almost too moral.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
It might be a sign that they're trying a little too hard to convince you, and maybe even themselves, of something.
Like they're overcompensating for something else.
Exactly. That's where the shadow might be lurking. Someone who's overly confident, for instance, might actually be masking deep insecurities. Someone who's always trying to please everyone might be repressing their own needs and desires. And so, by understanding this whole concept of the shadow, you gain a whole new level of insight into human behavior. You can anticipate your own reactive tendencies and maybe even make a conscious effort to act differently.
Instead of being controlled by those hidden impulses, right? That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
Being able to recognize and even manage those hidden forces within us.
It is. And speaking of powerful forces, the book, it dives into another big one, irrationality. But not just everyday irrationality. We're talking what the book calls high-grade irrationality. Those moments when our emotions completely hijack our reason.
Those times when logic goes right out the window.
Yeah.
And we just react. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Exactly. Think about it. You're under pressure, maybe feeling threatened or overwhelmed, and suddenly your emotions take over. The book actually gives some pretty intense examples.
Mm-hmm.
Violence, obsessions, even greed or controlling behavior. This isn't just about making a silly mistake,
Yeah.
It's about those actions that we often regret later, but at the moment they felt completely justified.
It's almost like a warning system.
Yep.
Like if you can learn to recognize those moments when you're slipping into high-grade irrationality, you can maybe avoid making choices you'll regret.
Precisely. It's like a wake-up call to step back, take a breath, and think before you act, especially when the pressure's on. So we've got the shadow. We've got this powerful irrationality.
Two pretty big pieces of the human puzzle already.
Mm-hmm.
It's already making me look at people in a new light. But what about all those unspoken things, the way people communicate without actually saying a word?
Now we're getting to the really interesting stuff. The book goes deep into nonverbal communication, those subtle signals that often reveal more than words ever could.
I've always been fascinated by that. Like you can sense someone's true feelings, even if they're saying something completely different.
Exactly. And the book breaks down these nonverbals into different categories. There's what it calls the baseline mood, which is that consistent facial expression and posture a person tends to have. Then you have those quick flashes of emotion, the micro expressions.
Oh, right.
That can betray hidden feelings just for a fleeting moment, And then, of course, we can't forget those tense gestures, folded arms, a clenched jaw.
Sure. Pretty clear signs of discomfort or disagreement, right?
Right. It's making me realize just how much information we're taking in subconsciously all the time.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And there are even more subtle signs to watch for. A forced smile, a quick eye roll. These can reveal a person's true reactions, even if they're trying to mask them.
So it's like a whole detective toolkit for understanding people. What kind of specific advice does the book offer about using these nonverbal cues?
Well, it really emphasizes paying close attention to these cues, especially during those first few encounters with someone. Those initial impressions can reveal a lot.
So it's like we should trust our gut feelings.
It's more about being observant, alert, picking up on those subtle signals that don't quite match up with what someone's saying. The book even dives into some fascinating research by Milton Ericson, a renowned therapist and a true master of nonverbal communication.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. He was a pioneer in hypnotherapy, and he discovered, for example, that when two people's breathing falls into sync, it can be a powerful indicator of connection and influence. He called it breathing synchronicity.
That's amazing. It makes you think about those times when you just instantly click with someone.
Yeah.
Like the deeper level of communication is happening below the surface.
You got it. And all of this ties into being able to assess someone's confidence level. The book suggests that confident people, they tend to have relaxed posture, steady eye contact, a genuine smile. On the flip side, those lacking confidence, they might display more closed-off body language, fidgeting, or maybe avoiding eye contact.
It's fascinating to think about how much we can learn about someone just by observing them closely.
Absolutely. It opens up a whole new dimension to understanding people. And speaking of understanding people, let's move on to another fascinating concept, narcissism. But here's the twist. The book proposes that everyone is narcissistic to some degree.
So we're all narcissists now. That's a bit unsettling.
Well, it's more about recognizing that self-love, self-love exists on a spectrum. There's healthy self-love, which is essential for well-being.
Right.
And then there's the toxic kind, and that can be incredibly destructive.
Okay, so how do we tell the difference?
Yeah.
I'm all for a healthy dose of self-love, but I definitely want to steer clear of the toxic kind.
The book uses some compelling real-world examples to illustrate this. On the positive side, there's Ernest Shackleton, the explorer who led that incredible endurance expedition to Antarctica.
Oh, yeah. Vaguely. Remind me.
Well, Shackleton's leadership style, his ability to connect with his crew on such a personal level during that incredibly challenging expedition, is presented as a form of healthy narcissism.
So it's not all bad. It's about how that self-love manifests.
Precisely. But then on the negative end of the spectrum, you have someone like Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire.
Yeah.
His inability to collaborate, his extreme micromanaging tendencies, these are classic signs of toxic narcissism. And so the book stresses the importance of being able to spot these toxic types early on, because they can really create chaos in your life if you let them.
It's like a warning system for those energy vampires.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? How do we take this understanding of narcissism and apply it to our own lives?
But that's where the book takes a fascinating turn. It delves into the art of influence. And believe it or not, it all starts with empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah.
As in the ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
That's right.
It seems like a bit of a leap from narcissism, but I'm intrigued.
The book makes a compelling argument that that understanding other people's insecurities is key to lowering their resistance and influencing them effectively.
So it's about using our knowledge of human nature to connect with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. And again, the book, it offers some fantastic examples. It talks about Pericles, the Athenian statesman. He had this uncanny ability to understand the motivations of his fellow politicians. Motivations that were often driven by emotion rather than pure logic.
It's like seeing through the facade and understanding the deeper reasons behind people's actions.
You're getting it. The book also brings back Milton Ericson, our master of nonverbal communication.
Oh, right.
And highlights how he was able to influence a religious couple who were seeking a divorce by speaking their language, by tapping into their shared belief system. It's a brilliant example of how empathy can be a powerful tool of persuasion, not through manipulation, but through genuine connection.
So the book is saying that if we cultivate empathy and learn to understand those insecurities, we can actually become more persuasive and navigate those social situations more effectively.
Absolutely. It's like having a secret weapon for building relationships and getting people on board with your ideas.
This is mind-blowing stuff. But I have to ask, where does time fit into all of this? It feels like such a fundamental part of the human experience.
You're right. Time is a crucial element, and the book, it dedicates a whole section to it. One of the key takeaways is that humans are naturally short-term thinkers. We're wired for that instant gratification, which can make it hard to achieve long-term goals or even appreciate the bigger picture.
I think we can all relate to that. We live in a world of instant everything, information, entertainment, you name it.
Exactly. And this is where the book gets really interesting. It suggests that being aware of death can actually help us shift our perspective on time.
That sounds a bit morbid.
Yeah.
But I am curious where you're going with this.
Well, think about it. When we consciously acknowledge our mortality, it forces us to confront the limited time we have.
Okay.
And this can actually make us value the present moment more
I see, I see.
and approach our goals with greater urgency.
So it's about embracing the present and making the most of the time we have.
You got it. It's a wake-up call to stop procrastinating and start living with intention.
Wow, I can already feel a shift in my thinking. This is powerful stuff, but I can tell there's so much more to come.
You're absolutely right. We've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of fascinating insights into human nature waiting to be explored.
Welcome back. We're still in the middle of our deep dive into human nature using the laws of human nature as our guide. Before we jumped into this, I had no idea how much our ancient instincts still shape our actions.
It's incredible, isn't it? We like to think we're so in control making all these rational decisions, but so much of our behavior is influenced by those primal urges that have been, hardwired into us for centuries.
It's almost like we're on autopilot sometimes.
Yeah.
So how can we become more aware of these primal forces at work?
Well, the book uses this really helpful analogy. It's the rider and the elephant. The rider, that represents our conscious mind, right? The part of us that thinks and plans and makes decisions. The elephant, that's our emotional, instinctive side. The part that's driven by all those deep-seated urges.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah.
So the rider wants to be in control, but sometimes that elephant just kind of takes over.
Exactly. And understanding this dynamic, it's crucial for navigating all the complexities of human behavior, especially when it comes to things like resisting manipulation or, making those sound decisions. If you can recognize when your elephant is in charge, you might be able to regain some control.
So what are some of those powerful primal forces that might be secretly influencing our behavior?
One that really stood out to me is this idea that we're incredibly susceptible to the moods and emotions of those around us. It's like emotional contagion. We unconsciously imitate others. We crave what they have. We even get swept up in those viral feelings of anger or outrage.
I've definitely experienced that. Like when you walk into a room where everyone's in a bad mood and suddenly you just find yourself feeling down too.
Precisely. And the book, it argues that this susceptibility to group emotions is a remnant of our tribal past, back when being in sync with the tribe was absolutely essential for survival. But in today's world, this same tendency can lead us into all sorts of irrational behavior.
It makes you think about things like mob mentality or groupthink,
Yeah.
how easily we can be swayed by the emotions of the crowd.
Exactly. And it's not just emotions. The book also it also highlights our primal need to rank ourselves, to measure our self-worth through status and achievements.
Oh, that's so true. Like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, trying to climb that social ladder.
Right. And the book suggests that this too is a holdover from our hunter-gatherer days, when status within the tribe was crucial for things like access to resources and mates. It's amazing how these ancient instincts still play out in our modern lives.
It's almost like we're looking through a window into our evolutionary past. So we need to be aware of those primal instincts lurking within us. But what about all those cognitive biases that cloud our judgment? Those mental shortcuts that can lead us to make not so smart decisions.
That's where the book dives deep into the psychology of decision making, and it highlights a number of those mental traps we can fall into, even when we think we're being completely logical.
Oh, I know I've fallen prey to those cognitive biases more times than I care to admit. Like confirmation bias.
Probably.
Only seeking out information that confirms our existing beliefs. It's so easy to get stuck in an echo chamber these days.
That's a classic one. And the book points out that we're especially vulnerable to confirmation bias when we're, emotionally invested in a belief. It's like we become blind to anything that challenges our view.
It's like when you're arguing with someone, you just can't see their point of view, no matter how much evidence they present. You're so convinced you're right.
Exactly. The book also it all talks about something called conviction bias, which is the tendency to believe something more strongly just because someone expresses it with great conviction.
Oh, I know this one. It's like those charismatic speakers who can make even the most outlandish claims sound believable.
You got it. In the book, it argues that we need to be very wary of this bias, especially when we're dealing with people who are skilled at using rhetoric and emotional appeals to persuade us.
So it's about looking beyond the surface, and critically evaluating the evidence, even when someone presents their case with tons of passion and charisma.
Right. And speaking of looking beyond the surface, the book, it also cautions us about something it calls rising pressure. This idea that a person's true character is often revealed under stress.
Oh, that's so true. It's like that saying, you don't really know someone until you've been through a crisis with them.
Precisely. So the book, it advises us to pay close attention to uh, how people behave under pressure. It can be a valuable indicator of their true nature.
So we've got these primal instincts and cognitive biases to watch out for. But what about the balance between skepticism and curiosity? It seems like finding that sweet spot is so crucial for navigating the world of ideas.
You're absolutely right. It's about striking that balance between being open to new ideas, but also maintaining a healthy dose of critical thinking. The book actually uses a great analogy. It's the writer and the horse.
Okay, I love a good analogy. Tell me more.
The writer represents our skepticism. You know, that critical thinking part of us that questions assumptions and evaluates evidence. The horse that represents our curiosity, that natural eagerness to explore new ideas and different perspectives.
So the writer needs to kind of guide the horse, not let it run wild.
Exactly. The book stresses the importance of this balance, especially in today's world where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
This is all so insightful, but I can't help but think about those times when our own negative emotions take over. Anger, resentment, even jealousy. They can feel like such powerful, destructive forces.
You're right. Negative emotions can be incredibly intense. In the book, it devotes a whole section to understanding and managing them. And it starts with the idea that these emotions are, they're a natural part of the human experience. Everyone experiences them.
So it's like that shadow side we were talking about earlier. We all have it.
Exactly. And the key message here is that instead of trying to suppress or deny these emotions, we need to learn to recognize them, understand where they come from, and find healthy ways to deal with them.
I've heard it said, what we resist persists, right?
Yeah.
So if we try to push those emotions down, they'll just come back even stronger.
You got it. And the book dives into specific strategies for dealing with different negative emotions. For example, it emphasizes the importance of forgiveness when it comes to resentment.
So instead of dwelling on past hurts, we need to find a way to let go of those grudges.
Right. The book actually uses a powerful image. It says, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Wow.
It only ends up hurting you.
That's a powerful way to put it. What about something like envy? That can be such a destructive emotion.
It can be. But the book, it offers some really interesting insights into the psychology of envy. It argues that envy often stems from feelings of inadequacy or insecurity.
So it's not really about the other person or what they have. It's more about our own internal struggles.
Exactly. The book suggests that one way to deal with envy is to shift our focus. Instead of comparing ourselves to others, we can focus on developing our own unique strengths and talents.
It's about shifting from external validation to internal fulfillment.
Precisely. And the book also talks about the power of gratitude as an antidote to envy.
So appreciating what we have instead of focusing on what we lack.
You got it. It's about cultivating a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity.
These are such powerful strategies for dealing with those negative emotions that can really drag us down.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to recognizing that we all have those shadow sides, those negative tendencies that we're not always proud of. The key is to become aware of them, understand where they come from, and find healthy ways to manage them.
It's about integrating those darker aspects of ourselves so they don't control us.
Exactly. And this book offers so much wisdom and practical advice for doing just that.
Wow, this has been such an incredible journey so far. I'm feeling so inspired to apply all these insights to my own life.
Me too. And believe it or not, there's still so much more to uncover. We'll be back in the next part to dive even deeper into this fascinating world of human nature.
Welcome back to our deep dive into human nature. It feels like we've uncovered so much already, from the hidden depths of the shadow to like the power of those ancient instincts we don't even realize are driving our actions. But there's one thing I've been thinking about. We've talked about narcissism, but what about all the other like toxic types out there? It feels like a bit of a social minefield sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. Navigating the social landscape can be tricky, and this book really doesn't shy away from outlining some of those challenging personality types you're likely to encounter.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some of these toxic types we should have on our radar?
Well, one that really stood out to me is the hyper perfectionist.
Ooh, I think we all know a few of those. Always striving for the impossible.
Exactly. They set these impossibly high standards, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. They can be incredibly critical and controlling, and their need for everything to be just so can create a lot of tension and anxiety.
It sounds exhausting just being around them. Like you're walking on eggshells all the time.
It can be. And the book suggests that often this intense perfectionism is a mask for deep insecurities. It's like they're trying to overcompensate for, a fear of failure or a feeling of not being good enough.
So it's not really about being perfect. It's about masking those deeper anxieties.
You hit the nail on the head, and the book advises us to be very careful about getting caught up in their whirlwind of demands. It can be a real drain on your energy and well-being.
So watch out for those hyper-perfectionists. What other toxic types should we be aware of?
Another one that's particularly tricky is the drama magnet.
Oh, those are the ones who always seem to be like surrounded by chaos and conflict, like they attract it wherever they go.
Exactly. They thrive on drama. And the book suggests that this often stems from a childhood where they learned that creating drama and chaos was the only way to get attention.
It's like they're addicted to that adrenaline rush of conflict.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So the book cautions us to be aware of their manipulative tendencies and to try our best to avoid getting sucked into their vortex of drama. It can be incredibly draining.
It's like protecting your own emotional energy from those negative vibes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the hyper-perfectionist and the drama magnet. Any others?
Well, then there's the passive-aggressive avenger.
Okay, what's their MO? I'm intrigued.
These are the folks who avoid direct confrontation, but they find those subtle, sneaky ways to get back at you. It's like they're harboring resentment and anger, but instead of addressing it openly, they express it through snide comments or backhanded compliments or other forms of passive aggression.
It's like death by a thousand paper cuts.
Exactly. And the book suggests that this behavior often comes from a fear of conflict, or maybe a belief that they can't express their anger directly, so that they find these roundabout ways to vent their frustration.
This is starting to sound a little too familiar. Are there any other toxic types we need to be on the lookout for?
One more that's especially relevant in today's world is the rigid rationalist.
Okay, what makes them so toxic?
They have this unwavering belief in their own rationality and logic, and they dismiss anything that doesn't fit into their very narrow worldview. They can be incredibly dogmatic and intolerant, and their insistence on always being right can make them really difficult to have a conversation with.
It's like they're completely closed off to any new information or different perspectives.
Exactly. And the book suggests that this rigidity is often a defense mechanism against, uncertainty and complexity. They cling to their rational framework because it gives them a sense of control in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
So it's about recognizing that there's more to life than just logic and reason. It's about
Yeah.
embracing the messiness and the complexity of human experience.
You got it. And being open to different ways of seeing the world.
So we've got the hyper-perfectionist, the drama magnet, the passive-aggressive avenger, and the rigid rationalist. Sounds like we really need to be on high alert out there. But how do we actually navigate these social minefields? Feels like you could
Yeah.
bump into one of these types anywhere.
That's where this book really shines. It offers some practical advice for dealing with these challenging personalities, and it all starts with awareness. Once you recognize their patterns of behavior, you can start to set boundaries and protect yourself from their negativity.
So it's about recognizing those red flags
Yeah.
early on and taking steps to protect your own well-being.
Exactly. And the book also emphasizes the importance of self-awareness.
So understanding our own triggers and vulnerabilities, like why we might attract certain types of people into our lives.
Precisely. Because often we attract these toxic types because we haven't fully dealt with our own shadow side, our own unresolved issues. It's like we're projecting our own inner turmoil onto others.
That's a powerful insight. So the book is suggesting that working on our own personal growth and healing can actually make us less susceptible to those toxic types.
That's the idea. The more self-aware we become, the better equipped we are to navigate those tricky social situations.
This has been such a fascinating and honestly a little unnerving look at the darker aspects of human nature, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
You're absolutely right. There's so much more to explore, but I think the book leaves us with a really powerful idea to ponder. Think about how these insights into human nature, both the good and the bad, might change your interactions with others and even how you approach your own goals.
It's like we've been given this incredible toolkit for understanding ourselves and the people around us.
Exactly. And now it's up to us to use those tools wisely, to build more fulfilling relationships, make more informed decisions, and hopefully live more meaningful lives.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the complexities of human nature. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery. We'll be back next time with another fascinating exploration into what makes us tick.